What's up everybody, welcome back to J Music, and today we're going to be ranking my own music. Originally I didn't want to make this video because I thought this would be arrogant to rank all my albums and EPs, so we're going to, because I don't know, I just thought it was arrogant until I realized that quite a bit of people have actually done this. So it's more like not on how good the music it is. I mean, it is my opinion, of course, so I'm going to have much stronger opinions, and I'm not going to rate the music because it's my music, so it's just going to be in order of a mixture of things, how much I like it, how much it resonates and is personal to me, and how much I am proud of myself on how good it is, essentially. So there will be a lot of shit talking on myself because everybody isn't. Some people think they're the greatest, and then you got the other people on my hand who are like, oh, it's hard for them to make music all the time because you just hate everything you make. So yeah, but we're gonna get into that, and yeah, so we're only including albums and EPs together, just as projects, not doing singles. I'll do a separate video for singles, probably some other time. Even probably not. I might just see what other people think, because I know Jude from Cold Crust and Insubordinate Brian is gonna do a ranking of all my albums and a single video as well, so I'd rather just see him rank them, to be honest. But yeah, let's get into it. At number 18, we have DeepLiar. This, by the way, I'm not counting instrumental versions in this ranking at all. It's just the reworked version and the normal version. This is DeepLiar, the original EP, my first ever project, and it's mainly down here because the mixing is terrible. The instrumentals are pretty decent. Some of them I really like, but some aren't that, a lot of them aren't that good. It's only got a few tracks, it's an EP, but still, this is probably the worst thing I've ever made, to be honest. And I hate the album cover, and I just hate the vocal mixing and the mixing in general. This album is pretty dog shit. And there's not even an Insubordinate Brian feature on this. There is a few standouts of the album though, the song DeepLiar is okay. Reverse is okay, I guess. And Tell Me Your Name in Life section, all the lyrics are good. They're just not mixed well, and some of the lyrics was changed to my lyric version for the better. So yeah, this is just down here. DeepLiar at number 18. At number 17, we have Dark Shadow, the original version. Not the deluxe edition or the instrumental version that's coming out. By the way, guys, it's going to be an instrumental version and a rework version that's coming out. But yeah, just the original version album. This is my first ever album, so it's better. It's still better than my first EP, but not my first project, I should say. But this is my second project here. And honestly, the vocal mixing is still not that good. It's pretty bad, but it's still better than the vocal mixing in the DeepLiar EP. So yeah, there's something, and it has some cool instrumentals like 12:58 a.m., Fuck School, Answer the Phone, My Lies Are Deep. And it has Insubordinate Brian's infinitely worst track, which he agrees with and I agree with, is Problems. I think it was just the fact that I kind of wanted this album out, so I was like, make a song. And I was like, oh shit, quickly just made a song, and we just kind of chucked it in here because I wanted a feature. Didn't think of it as a continuation of the album. So it doesn't really flow in this album well. It's just spot bang the 5th song in the album, and it kind of takes you out of the mood of the album. But that's not the only reason it's bad. There's other songs in here I hate. I hate the vocal mixing, but yeah, it's still an okay album. I hate it, really, but it's not the worst thing I've ever heard, and it's by myself, so of course I'm going to be a bit negative. At number 16, we have Dark Shadow Deluxe Edition. When I make the reworked version, I'm probably going to delete this, because the reworked version, I'm probably just going to call it the rework / deluxe edition, and I'm going to add a bunch of the bonus tracks from that I already had, and maybe make just one more bonus track so I can say it's not just a reworked version plus the same bonus tracks. I'll make 1 or 2 more tracks just for fun. But yeah, honestly, it's way better than the original version of Dark Shadow, because it has that other track which is really good that Jude made, and also I'm featured in the end of it. That was a really, really great song. It's way better than Problems, and it doesn't mess the flow up of the album. And this does feel like the definitive version of the original album until I make the rework version. At this time period, this is just the definitive version of the album, to be honest. Like, it has bonus tracks as well, which makes the album feel more complete. And those bonus tracks just feel like normal tracks in the album. So, yeah. I'm also probably going to delete this just because I didn't list that some of them are bonus tracks, so it just shows up as a track in the album. So when I delete it, I'll clean it up and I'll add the bonus tracks, the reworked version, and you're probably wondering if I've already remastered the system, but I'm going to turn it into the remastered the system slash reverb and just like change it again so it's not just the same track. And then I'm going to have this track on here and just slightly add something to the end of the track that you made to make it a little bit different from the previous deluxe edition, but it's going to be the same track with maybe like a just little fade into the next track. Nothing too crazy, but overall, yeah, it's better than Dark Shadow, but essentially it is just Dark Shadow with a few slight changes to some tracks, bonus tracks, which are the bonus tracks pretty much make the album, and then the track that you have made. So overall, this is probably the only track I'm not gonna rate my tracks, but I'm saying from here on out, it's 6 and up. Anything below this album is like a 5 to like a 3. So yeah, everything from here up is like 6. Well, for me, they're probably all 6s because I made them. I'm not going to rate my own album, but like, general philosophy of how good the mixing is and how good, not how much I like it, but just how well it's made it, they're probably all like 6s from here on up. Number 15, we have my second album, Kid on the Moon. Not the reworked version, just the original version. This version is probably the worst version of the album, but it's the original version. So I do have, even though it is only a year old, I do have some nostalgia to this album. But this album, the instrumentals are really good. I love the instrumentals on it. It's just the vocal mixing is still really bad. Because I was just recording on Ableton, and I was actually recording some songs just on iMovie, but I wasn't adding any effects to it. I added like occasional echo and a slight bit of reverb, but I don't know what it was. I knew how to vocal mix, but I think I just couldn't be bothered to vocal mix. And I'm like, I can always just go back and edit it and make another version, which I ended up doing anyway, I guess. But I should have just actually done what I do now and do spend a long time doing vocal mixing on Ableton, or occasionally I use BandLab as well, which is even better than just using no effect at all. But yeah, Kid on the Moon. It's not a terrible album, but it's also not a good album. I do like some songs like The Bar, 10 Years. This is a very personal album to me. That's why it's kind of higher up. It's than Dark Shadow Deluxe Edition. It's a more personal album. This album is very dark, but it's also kind of a little too dark because I kind of grabbed things which were true, and I kind of made them a little bit more negative than what they seem to be about. Like, I'm not going to say it because you don't need to know, it's just my personal life. But, like, stuff in this album was from, like, when I was younger. There was shit stuff that happened that occurred in this album. But some stuff which wasn't even that bad, it was just a fun time, is really negative in this album. But that is also a good thing as well, because it kind of shows my mood at the time. Because when this came out, it was, like, smitch bang lockdown, so I was probably just sitting in my room thinking on things of the past, thinking of things as more worse than what they actually were. So, that's why the rework version is better, because I redid some of the vocals, so it's not like, it's still a dark album, but it's less like negative. It's more just a continuation of true stories, because this album is a true story album. So if you didn't know that, guys, it's a true story album. Dark Shadow is partly a true story album, but there was made up characters in there, so yeah. Alright, at number 14, we have Beach Volume 3. Now, this album is probably the worst in the Beach trilogy, in my opinion, because the trilogy is quite a bit for these tracks. Like, a whole trilogy of albums and an album and 2 EPs gets kind of repetitive, and this album kind of just sounds a little bit too similar to the other Beach volumes. But it's also not terrible, and it has an Insubordinate Brian feature in there as well, which is cool. So yeah, it's still better because the mixing, there's no vocals, so the mixing is way better than those other albums below this. So that's why it's kind of up higher than those. better mixing, and it has a better flow to it. Like, it's only 12 minutes long, it's an EP, it's short. Those other ones get a little boring. This one just has a flow to, like, where tracks kind of sound similar, but it's also not, like, torturous to listen to. Like, it's not the worst thing I've ever made, and it's kind of just a wrapping up of the trilogy. It's usually, except it doesn't wrap up on a bang. Usually if you have like a trilogy in movies, it wraps up with a bang. This was kind of just finishing it off, adding a bit of spice to the cake, kind of adding a bit of icing to the cake. It's not necessarily adding anything crazy, but it is putting something next to the other two albums to make it a trilogy. I kind of just made this really quick because I'm like, I've made Beach Volume 1 and 2, why not just make it a trilogy? And there is also, which I'm not including on this list, there is Beach Volume 1 through 3 with bonus tracks, and that is really bad to listen to as a whole. But if you're listening to it in parts or using it for like your footage, if you want to use music in your films or your footage, it's a great little example of a long freaking, what was it, like an hour long classical album. Technically it's technically just one big project split into three things. So number 13, we have Beach Volume 2. Now this is probably the most, no, this is not probably, this is the shortest project I have. It only goes for 9 minutes. And because of that, it just, even though Beach Volume 3 is only 12 minutes, 3 minutes is quite a lot when you're sitting there and just listening. So if you're listening to any of my albums as one go, this is probably the best one to do it if you have a short attention span, because this is it just goes quickly and has some of the best tracks from the Beach trilogy. It's not the best one in the Beach trilogy, but it's better than Volume 3, and it has some ones that are really cool, like String and The Rocks with Instaborn and Brian. That was cool. Another collaborative song / featured song with the Instaborn and Brian. So yeah, it's, it's not like the best thing I've ever made, but it's a nice little EP that flows together, and you don't get bored because it's nice and short, and it just kind of sits right in the middle of that trilogy. And yeah, it's a pretty decent little EP. At number 12, we have a DeepLiar mixtape. Now, originally I was going to put Beach Volume 1 here, but I feel like Beach Volume 1 just has more hits, like Beach. It has more songs in it which are more personal to me. But this album is also a very personal album to me. But this is one of my only albums where it doesn't have, this is the only album where it doesn't have a single song which is a true story. At least all my albums except this one, and instrumental albums, of course, have at least one of the songs in all my albums except the DeepLiar mixtape, just repeating myself, has a story to it, like a true story which actually happened to me. And then the rest can be whatever it wants, but at least one. If not, my early ones like Kid on the Moon and Dark Shadow are almost entirely true stories with me, which have just been slightly changed to make a album, or not changed, but slightly made it into lyrics, and maybe added a few characters in there. But it's all based off real people and me. It's just some of it I make up characters because, it's what David Bowie used to do, like Ziggy Stardust. I had kind of my personas in my albums. And yeah, so if you really listen, you can tell about that. But this is the only one where it's not like that. This is technically, it's a personal project to me because I loved making it, and there is some stuff which is personal to me. But this album to me, I just went, I like listening to, when I was a kid, I used to make like CDs of just random compilations of like random artists, because I would download them on like MP3 website, YouTube MP3s. And then I put them onto disc. So this is kind of like, sorry about that pause there, I thought I saw something. But yeah, like I would put them onto a CD disc, so it was kind of like a mixtape for me at the time. And I was like, what if I made an album which is just entirely like different mixed genres into one big little album? But people call it an album, I consider it a mixtape. But a lot of people are calling it an album because it says album, but whatever, and it's the same length as an album, but it's a mixtape to me because of the way it flows and the way it's just like a flowing, continuous mixtape. And some of the mixing is purposefully, like, usually my mixing is accidentally bad. This is some of the mixing I purposefully did bad because I wanted it to sound like it was glitching and have a bit of, as if you were listening to a tape and a CD, they have stops, they have glitches. I wanted this album to sound like that, and it does that well. Looking back on it, I reckon I should have just made the vocal mixing like good instead of trying to go for that effect, but I guess it does work as an effect. My dream would be to actually put this album on a cassette tape though, because then you'd be able to like imagine as if it was the cassette doing all those things, you know, making those glitching, doing all that. But yeah, that is, it's still a really great album, but yeah, it's not a really great album, sorry, it's still a decent album, but yeah. At number 11, we have Beach Volume 1. So let me just get this up here, because then I can look at the tracks and just have it all in front of me. But yeah, Beach Volume 1, one of my earlier kind of albums. It's the first one in the Beach trilogy. And I really love this one because I went through a kind of, this came out after The Kid on the Moon. I went through kind of a bit of a classical phase, so this is a very classical album, but it's also got some very emotional kind of pieces in here. And then some ones that are just really cool, like little experimental songs like The Storm and Water. And then you've got really personal ones to me, which even though they're instrumentals, they still have a story behind them. Because that was originally what I want. Like, no, not originally. This is what these albums are to me. They're stories told by instrumental. It's like a story told without lyrics. But that ended up changing, and it kind of just became this orchestral thing. It was all going to be a mixture of random instrumentals to tell a story without lyrics and be this big Pink Floyd kind of rip-off thing. But that ended up being what Soulless Glass was. And this ended up just being Beach, just a big hour-long trilogy. So yeah, it's the best in the trilogy, and my favorites are probably like Piano, The Storm, Beach, you know, and Jude's track Orchestral Suite is pretty good. The song James is pretty good, but yeah, it's a decent album for me, and I never really say that about myself, so that's how I know I've done well. I think it's okay. It must be okay, because I'm probably the most persistent on myself. Like, I'm always, no, this isn't good enough, kind of, like, the amount of albums that could have been made. But yeah, so I guess that's a good thing. Number 10, we have DeepLiar reworked / deluxe edition. So this is just my first ever EP. Well, now it's an album. It's now made into an album because of the length and the amount of songs. But yeah, it's a deluxe edition as well. So it has bonus tracks, and it's reworked. All the songs are remastered and all that. So yeah, this time it has 8 songs and goes for 31 minutes instead of, I think last time I had 5 or 6 songs and it went for like 10, nearly 11 minutes. But yeah, the remastered version is way better than the original, but it's still not one of my really good albums. But it still sounds way better. The mixing is so much better, and the instrumentals, I also like mix the instrumentals, so the mixing of the entire tracks are better, except the thing that brings us down is the bonus tracks aren't the best. Sunset's alright, but Brush and Don't Lie are probably some of my worst bonus tracks. They kind of just, I thought they were good at the time, but I look back on them and I'm like, no, they're way too long. And Brush, I kind of just made it as a joke kind of a thing, because I'm like, oh, let's make it, I know Jude has really long songs, let's just make a song that's longer than any of Jude's songs that he's ever made. And it turns out alright. Like, I went, okay, let's try to make this somewhat interesting, but I ended up going, okay, yeah, no, I'm just gonna do this anyway. And it kind of, because I wanted to add time to the album as well, but it's also a little personal to me, even though it's an instrumental. As I said before, instrumentals can be personal to you as well, but it just drags on a bit. So the whole reason I kind of made this though is so I can grab clips, continuous parts out of this song and use it in my videos without getting copyrighted, or a short film or something like that. It's kind of like what I did with Beach originally. It was created for that reason. So this is a more kind of personal version of the album, because the lyrics are all the same, but slightly changed to how I feel and how the stories within the album actually happened. So it's not altered at all. This is a completely true story. The only song in here which isn't completely true is Life is Fiction, because that's based on someone I knew. It's a true story, but it's not true to me, as should I say. It's a story I based off someone that I knew, so that album is dedicated to them. Not necessarily dedicated, but made about them. Could be dead right now, those people. I'm not going to mention, probably in juvie, probably. I'm not going to mention this shit, but from my old high school, it's just someone I knew that, he fucked up a lot. So that's just going to be down there. At number 9, we have Kid on the Moon reworked slash deluxe edition. Once again, this is a reworked version, so all the songs are remastered. That's essentially what it means. Remix, so the vocal mixing is, of course, a much improvement. So this and the lyrics are slightly changed, and they're, of course, re-recorded. So this is the definitive edition of Kid on the Moon for me. It's the one that's the most personal because it rings true to those old stories, and it's not. I look on the ones which I looked on as depressing are a bit more happy, and the ones that I thought were dark somehow ended up even darker. It's hard to explain, but this album's very personal to me, and I have a bunch of bonus tracks, a lot of bonus tracks on there, and I really enjoy these bonus tracks. One of them ended up actually turning into a single where I added lyrics and I made a slow version. So there's 2 versions of that single, and that single was called Insane. So check out Insane. There's also an alternative mix. But yeah, I got the instrumental from that and used it and added lyrics. But yeah, it's still not the greatest thing ever because it is essentially the better version of that album, but it's okay for something that I've made. I miscounted the numbers, so I'm just going to stop saying the numbers because I don't know if I counted the original, like if when I was counting before I did this video, I just quickly counted then pressed start, so I didn't know if I accidentally included instrumentals in my counting, but so I'm just gonna ignore those numbers and just say next we have this. All right, so next we have, where are we? Here it is. Kev Strikes Back original motion picture soundtrack. This is not a super personal album to me, but it is like as in a story, but as in what it is, it kind of is, because this is the final film in the movie Juice trilogy. It ended off a fragment of Juice Gang, so the last movie besides the Horace and Bimbo movie if I ever finished the Horace and Bimbo 3. So yeah, this is the last one in the trilogy. It kind of ended off a thing of like childhood, teenagehood. Kind of ended off a fragment of our lives in a way, not really lives, it's a bit overstatement, but yeah, this channel was something that we really all cared about for ages, and it was just a very funny, awesome channel, and we're probably going to make some more videos on that, but it's kind of coming towards an end because Jude's finishing school soon, and then I'm finishing school after that, and then Ashley, if he stays or drops out, I don't know, but so, you know, we might make some bathroom hunters and some Juice videos, a few more. I think we've got to make at least one more video, but I want to make like a video. This is kind of off topic, sorry guys, but I kind of want to make a video which ends off that channel, like, and use a song from one of my newest albums, which I really like, and I want to put it on there and go back to the OG Hill and all the old stuff, and just do like a final thing, like a kind of goodbye video, and then maybe come back every once in a while, so it's not just like, you know, even though we don't have major fans that are going to be like, oh no, but just as a thing that I would like, and I'm sure they might want to do too, but I feel like that'd be a good idea to like end it off. So yeah, I don't think it's the end of it yet, but in to the end of this year and the start of the next year is probably when the last few videos are going to come out, so there's probably going to be a few more, but not, you know, as active as we will. So anyway, that went off topic, but yeah, this album was kind of personal because yeah, it ended off a big fragment of making those movies, and it was a fun time, and we finally made a score for the movie, and it's with Insaborn and Brian, so some of his best songs on here, and some of my best songs at the time of the release of the movie from me were on here as well, so it was kind of our best tracks at that time period in this album, so this soundtrack, and it's got 16 songs. I'd say a pretty well mix of between me and him of the amount of songs, probably half, similar, something like that. But yeah, it's just a really great soundtrack as well. But yeah, that's number something. I don't know. We're not doing numbers anymore. So we're just going to go on to the next one. So we have a Divorce and Addiction. This is probably my most personal album to me in a way. So Sorry, it's an EP. It's probably my most personal EP to me in a way. It's a 14-minute long EP with 5 tracks, and I'm not going to go super in-depth into this meaning behind this because I don't want to talk about it, but it's a meaningful album to me, and I love this song, Broken Lungs and Broken Hearts. That's a instrumental song I made. And then, of course, the Miss My Happy Family with Insaborn and Brian, the collaborative song. It's really good because he's in it, so it's not me, the whole track, but yeah, and then Miss the Memories, it's just the track is really personal to me, and I actually like it for once in a while. I usually don't like my music, but I do like this. I love the album cover as well, and the mixing, so yeah, that's a Divorce and Addiction. Next, we have Soulless Glass, the instrumental EP, which came out around the same time as Divorce and Addiction. It's not as personal to me, but in my opinion, it's a better made album. It's instrumental. I love this is probably one of my favorite album covers. And there's a cool story around this. Dude looked at the album cover, he found the video. He didn't even know that I was in the glass the whole time. And I did the same thing with him. There's one album, it's like, I think it's called, If I Said It Was Okay, Would You Believe Me? There's a picture of a disc. I always used to just think it was a picture of a disc. I only just realized today that it's him looking in the disc with his face. And I was like, you're fucking kidding. I didn't even realize that, so, we both fucked up, so, yeah. No, I'm kidding. But, some of my favorite tracks from this is like Glass. There's only 5 tracks, so, Glass, Stare, and Soul is probably my 3 favorites. They're all personal, great tracks to me. It's still personal album to me. And there's also a Soulless Glass film, which isn't the original take. The original version of that film got completely deleted because when I was editing it, my Premiere, it fully crashed. And then I went to go edit another short film on Premiere Pro. And turns out the reason it was crashing is because my subscription was ended and I was somehow still on the program. So when I reopened it, it was like, your subscription's out, because I paid for a yearly subscription, and now I'm gonna actually, because I wasn't in photography last year at school, so they wouldn't pay for my thing. I don't know how my photography teacher told me that they would have paid for it anyway, so I should have just asked. I think I asked the wrong person, I ended up paying, but I'm gonna get it again and get it for free, but I just barely got that finished on Premiere Pro before my thing ran out. So that's the second alternative take of Soulless Glass. But watch the Soulless Glass film. It's the best way to listen to the album because it's got a story behind it. There's lots of symbolism. It's not like things from my past. It's stuff that's currently going on and things that have happened before as well. In the most recently, like 2 years ago, there's stories of lockdown told by symbolism. There's stories of now told by symbolism, and the future in a way. So yeah, it's a really personal EP to me. I keep saying album, but it's an EP. They're all projects, so yeah. We have Reflection. I used to think this was my best album, but I no longer really think that. I still think it's one of my best mixed albums, and I love a lot of tracks on here, like very personal to me, like Australia Is My Home, I Still Don't Know Your Name, I'm Dying, You're Still On My Mind. But there is some tracks on here which aren't the greatest, which is why it's kind of lower, like Irrelevant and overrated artists who overhype themselves on the one sun, or like some tracks which just was like, I don't hate the tracks, and it's still a better album than, Soulless Glass, but it's like they don't really work in this album, in my opinion, and they shouldn't have ended up in this album. So yeah, that's just a personal take on my own album, so I'm allowed to have a personal take, of course. But yeah, so that's that. Melodic / hyperbolic Kid on the Moon, which is originally titled A Kid on the Moon Part 2. Or sorry, The Kid on the Moon 2, something like that. But I was like, this album is melodic, and it's half melodic, half hyperbolic, kind of more hypey, kind of hyperbop, and kind of Charlie XCX, 100 gex type stuff. Let me say 1,000 gex, but yeah. So it's kind of like half of it's a sequel, and then halfway through it's still a sequel, but it just changes up completely. Pretty much after the song Crosscutter, Crosscutter kind of changes up, and you can tell it's kind of ironic because when you listen to the album on Spotify, you can see after Crosscutter, everything just has the big E next to it as explicit because it goes into, you know, Charlie XCX type stuff. But yeah, this is a sequel to Kid on the Moon. It's way better mixed, and it's one of my best albums. And if you look closely, we don't even have to look closely, if you just look at the album cover, there's 2 moons for Kid on the Moon Part 2 is the original name. It's a hint towards that. And then there's me in the middle. I'm in the middle of both the moons, because I'm the kid on the moon, or in this case, in the center of the moon. My longest album, Melodic Earbleed. Now, this isn't my favorite because it's my longest. It's my favorite because it's one of the most personal albums to me, probably the second most personal album to me. It's very personal to me. I really like the way this is mixed together. I feel like out of all my albums, this is the one that flows together. This feels like every track is in the right spot. I do have other albums like that, but this one, it feels like every track is in the right spot, and there's no tracks that shouldn't be in this album, and it flows together, just a perfect mix of instrumental and lyrical, and it doesn't have the need to be like half instrumental, half lyrical. It's just a mixture between both the whole way through. And it's got like just some of my favorite tracks I've made, like Hate, Pushed Away, Taken is my favorite track of all time, so that's on here. Core, Mental Over Money, there's just a lot on here. S-Rever, which is just reverse backwards, which is a track which I found this on my computer, and it was the original track I made for my short film S-Rever, which is technically, it's reverse, written in reverse. Like if you read the word backwards, it's E-R-V-E-R-S-E, but, you know, that's reverse, but it's spelled E-S-R-E-V-E-R, S-Rever, yeah, so, yeah, this is just one of my most personal albums, one of my favorite album covers, and yeah, it's surprisingly one of my favorite. It's really long, so it's probably not the best album to listen to all in one go. You might get a little bored, but for me, I think it's my favorite. So yeah. Now to my favorite album. Originally I was talking about my favorite album on the desk, but I got cut off. So as I was saying about the last album, how I said it was like, you know, the perfect, it had the perfect, like way, like the songs would flow together and all the songs match perfectly, and not a single song in that album sounded like it shouldn't be there. That's just like this album. I'm not gonna hype it up a lot because I made it. I still think it's not a really good album because I made it, but I do think this is the best album that I've made ever. That I've ever made for like vocal mixing, just the mixing of the whole thing in general. The way it flows together, the length of the album is perfect for what it is. It doesn't feel dragged out. And yeah, overall, Dealing with Death, I would say the name Dealing with Death is my best album, and at this moment in time, it may change once I make new stuff, but Dealing with Death is my favorite album, my personal favorite. And yeah, overall, I think it's not a perfect album, not even a really good album, because I made it, so it's kind of hard for me to say it's good, as I've kept saying a million times, but it is the best thing that I've ever made, and yeah. And the genre of this album is kind of like, what would you call this, like alternative? But I don't know, it's like, this is one of my only albums where it just follows a specific thing, but it's kind of like, it's very David Bowie inspired as well in how it's ordered. Like, it kind of ends off as, it starts off lyrically and ends off instrumentally, like the last 3 or so tracks are like instrumental, which is, you know, really cool. So yeah.